1 o'clock, yeah.
Hey, good morning, Boker Tov, everybody.
Boker Tov.
Let's start our session. And, we started again last week after our break. We're going to be doing all kinds of interesting things. But last week was prayer, and somehow I was still in a prayer mode. So we're doing more prayer today. But I'm preparing other classes on other topics, and one that might take a few weeks to get to it because it's a lot of research, but on,
Well, this you can't possibly do today.
we're not gonna do all of this today. No worries. Some of them we're gonna skip. But we're gonna do, I wanna do one on Judaism's openness to other religions and how, I know, there were medieval prohibitions on which many Jews today were observant, still follow, not going into churches, and is Christianity idol worship or not? And there's all these interesting questions in Jewish, law about, well, how do you, we have all this very strong Torah tradition. Don't, if you see an idol, you gotta break it, like you can't. So what do you do when you go to a church and there's statues of, all these saints everywhere in the Catholic Church, and what do you do but other religions? And so I'm gonna do a session on that at some point, but we'll.
On how to break the statutes.
Yeah.
The iconoclast, yeah, right.
Well, I want,
Trouble if it's in the hospital.
yeah, exactly. But I once had it's on the side, but I once had a rabbi, a teacher of mine, when I was in yeshiva in Israel, who was part of an interfaith conference. And he said he had, people from all over the world coming, and a young Swami came from India. And he was really excited. He said, I want to show you something. And he kind of opens up his bag, and there was his favorite deity, like a Krishna, in front of him.
Yeah.
And then the other is a young rabbi at this point. In his mind, he's thinking, it's the land of Israel. Do I have to take it and smash it? I don't think he would have ever really done it, but that's what came into his mind,
Did
right?
you sit somewhere else with that thing?
I said to him, well, you should have asked him, do you really think that's God, or is it just, something that helps you pray? So, cool. But today we're going to be looking really at prayer, and we're going to be looking, so the Baal Shem Tov, the founder,
Recording in progress.
has a whole section of his commentary on the Torah that's all about prayer. And it's really interesting and really inspiring stuff. We're not going to do everything here today. This is just a small selection. There's 140 teachings in a row about prayer that he has, and it all begins in the parashah of Noah, when he starts talking about Noah's Ark. And suddenly this opened up something, and he started just talking about prayer one day, and has all these teachings about prayer that came out of this. And so we'll be talking about them, and I think really talking about how do we make our prayer more alive and more relevant in our lives. I was teaching some of these yesterday. Yesterday I taught a 2.5-hour class to the rabbinical school by Zoom in Los Angeles. And it was about Jewish meditation and prayer. And so I taught some of this to them too. And it's
That's something new.
that was something new. Yeah, it was fun. Yeah. It's a fun thing Jewish prayer is not an easy thing to do with a lot, we have complicated rules and a big prayer book and lots of things. So it's have to constantly work at making it inspiring and powerful. So
Nancy looks like she's in a library.
It's my library.
your
Good
books.
morning, good Boker
I
Tov.
know,
everyone.
I know.
It is my
Good morning.
library,
Good morning,
yeah.
Nancy. Good morning, Phil. Okay. Oh, wow. Very nice. Very
The
nice.
study, it's always the smallest bedroom in the house, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, well, let's begin our journey into the Baal Shem Tov Amud HaTfilah, which means the pillar of prayer. And for a long time, none of this was ever translated into English, but about a decade ago, somebody translated it into English and makes it easier to access.
Yeah.
Mr. Perez,
Hey, is this chapter 15 or?
teaching
Teaching
so
15?
so the way it works in, you know, all the Hasidic books and many other books by rabbis is all their teachings are just included in the parashah, because they all were, you know, it was a Shabbat and they started talking about something related to the parashah and then went on a tangent and went on for hours sometimes, and someone who had a good memory kept it all in here, and then after Shabbat wrote it all down.
Hmm.
So, and then, so over the years collected everything, so that's how it's organized. This is number 15 and all of the Baal Shem Tov's teachings about the Parsha of Noah. That's where we are, there, 15, 16, and we'll go through it. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. You shall make a window or light for the ark, teva. And you shall finish it to an amah above. Make a door on its side with lower, second, and third story shall you make it. Genesis 6:16. The word teva that you utter in Torah study and prayer should shine. For every word letter contains worlds, souls, and divinity. These ascend, join together, and unite with divinity. Then the letters form a word and make true unifications in godliness. You must merge your soul, with each of these aspects. Then all the worlds will join together and descend, which causes immeasurable pleasure and delight.
A lot of stuff there. How do you make your words shine?
What's Amma?
Amah is a biblical, it's a cubit. It's a biblical measurement.
Okay. What is it? A measurement.
Measurement, yeah. How do you make your words shine? Yeah,
With your intention.
okay. Do you ever have that experience of your words shining, whether in prayer or in other moments, or other people's words shining?
And more like other people's words shining, I mean, something, I hear resonates with me.
Hmm.
In a deep and personal way, then the word shine.
Beautiful.
Poetry does,
Mhm.
because it's specifically paying attention to it.
And also maybe when people recite poetry, they do it with a lot of feeling and intention, and it kind of just is up there for one. I sometimes think when speakers are really on, you get the feeling that their words are shining, you know, their words are alive, you know, they're not just kind of floating through the room and everybody, you know, you can all be held in them, you know, so.
I guess I've, had the occasion recently where on Shabbat where I've given
Yeah,
said the prayer for the hostages, and I've said a little bit about the hostages or just comments. And I could see some people's expressions,
yeah,
that whatever I said really hit,
resonating, yeah.
it resonated, and
When you say with feeling, right, it comes from the heart.
Hmm.
You know, you're talking about something you care about, and it's dear to you, that your words shine. So what does it mean to make your words in prayer shine? Yeah, you have that.
Be totally focused and not reading prayers and have your mind somewhere else.
I like that, not reading, but you're doing something else with them, you know?
I always just used to run through it.
Yeah,
And over the last, I don't know. I'd say 10 years maybe,
Hmm.
paying attention to what they say.
mm,
Because you can read something just to get done with it.
yeah,
But if you're thinking about it as you read it, it makes a big difference.
beautiful. Yeah, it's and then maybe it's not that outward shine, but it's shining for you
It's
because
not
you're
inside.
saying it and it's shining for you because it's
Right.
entering into your soul. It's not just floating out there and there's musical sometimes when we have our davening team on musical Shabbat, sometimes I feel it's shining, and you can see everybody in the room and there's Aryeh's Mora going like this and singing loudly, and this
Yeah.
person is doing this and that person's doing that, and sometimes we're dancing, the whole feeling, the whole thing sometimes get the whole room. I'm the feeling when I get this sometimes. I remember once having this in a very strong way at my father had visited when I was at rabbinical school, visited in Los Angeles, visited me, but at the same time, somehow he got connected to the publisher of the Jewish Journal, which is the main Los Angeles Jewish newspaper. And he did an article on my father's teaching. My father taught in his house, and people came and did the front cover on my father. And suddenly everybody was interested in my father's teachings for a few weeks, and it was like this big deal. And anyway, we got all invited to this macher, person's house on a Friday night, and we were singing, and then my father said to me, "Let's sing the way we do at home, the way we do our chanting and everything." And somehow that evening it just came alive, and I felt that somehow like our words were like glimmering. That's what it felt like. The words were glimmering. And I think you can get that feeling, when a prayer is done with a lot of feeling and power, it's sometimes Shalom Aleichem for people, they feel,
Yeah.
glimmers, it's Friday night, a special time, and so there's like that can make words shine, right? Can make things come alive, right? So I like this idea that every letter contains worlds, souls, and divinity. That's what it feels beautiful, right? It's like when you're in that space of shining, it's like every part of what you're saying is so alive. It's like it's got a world inside of it. That's incredible. And soul. How can you have a soul inside a word? But it's kind of an amazing idea.
Well, you've heard people say, Davis, it speaks to me.
Yeah.
Or it spoke to me.
Right, beautiful. Right, he says, it speaks to me. You're not saying, I found that idea just interesting, but somehow it touched you, right?
Right.
It touched you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I had an experience. I could add something when I was, not to diminish the chanting that Cantor Figure does, but when I was in Rhode Island for several years, the cantor there was very special, and there were sometimes I felt very moved after a Friday evening service to the point where I would come up to him and say, "Thank you very much. It's opened up a different perspective, just a different feeling." Just the way he had a different different type of a chant and way of chanting that was well, to me it was spirit. It was a mystical moment, almost spiritual. I felt much relieved, much more connected.
Yeah, it opened you up somehow,
Yes, I said, I just had to say thank you. I could sense what he was feeling while he was praying and while he was chanting some of the prayers, and he had a special way of doing it.
Beautiful.
It seems, I find, especially the last sentence and what you were saying, singing and all that, where it talks about causes immeasurable pleasure and delight.
Yeah,
It's so different from the solemnity.
I know, yeah,
And it's
Yeah.
no Baal Shem Tov, I guess.
yeah, right.
But it's this joy. I mean, I was thinking, I went to hear this poet read 2 weeks ago, and he's wonderful. But he was reading his stuff, and it was very dramatic.
Yeah.
And he was just like laughing as he was saying certain things, and you
Wow.
knew that this was like really affecting him.
Mm,
And it was that joy.
Beautiful. The sense of, I know that's pretty a strong sentence, immeasurable pleasure and delight, like you could,
I was
feel
like,
that,
I
yeah.
get very solemn.
I know, it's
Like,
like, yeah. Oh,
Rabbi, you just talked about the solemnity of prayer.
I talked about solemnity
I
affair.
think that's what I heard you say. Somebody's said the solemnity of prayer.
Yeah,
Okay, sorry, I got mixed up. I have a question, and that has Jewish prayer always been solemn? Or is that more a import from like the grand Protestant churches
yeah.
of Europe and, kind of took that as the way that we should act and pray and
So it's a good question. I mean, Sephardic prayer is not solemn. They have it's got a lot more of like kind of joy and chanting, and so part of it might be the effect of Europe, and also maybe the persecutions of Europe, and what we went through in Europe. But people also think, oh, they think, what's the Jewish prayer, the mourner's Kaddish, that's our mode, right? Solemnity. But I think it must have been somewhat the mode of the general Jewish world, because the Baal Shem Tov and the Hasidim were reacting to it. They were saying, no, prayer should be joyful, prayer should be delightful, prayer should be, and they kind of brought it, become a little bit rote, a little bit, I don't know, yeah, solemn. I mean, there is a tradition that after the destruction of the temple 2,000 years ago, all of the worship is a bit more solemn, right? That's why. But I mean, even the words to Kaddish are not solemn, right? They're about life. And so if you're actually, yeah, the words of the prayer itself in the Hebrew are not particularly solemn, but I mean, I think part of, maybe two forces at play. One is, yes, the sense of in Germany and, copying the solemnity of Protestant services, which are particularly, they were going for that solemnity. I think also in somewhat modern Judaism, a lot of Judaism's become a little bit of ancestor worship, and, it's all about yard sites and yiskers and kaddishes and candles and plaques. And so that's solemn, that's pretty solemn, that's a big part of Jewish life for a lot of people in our generation. So that's, if Judaism is remembrance, and after the Holocaust too, right? The Holocaust had a big effect too. And so remembrance and solemnity became a big part of Judaism, and solemnity versus the Holocaust, solemnity versus all these things. So that brings a solemn tone. But there's also been the counter movement of Friday night has been this super joyful, and Shabbat is here, no matter what's happening in the world, let's be joyful, and Jewish weddings, and that's like complete outpouring of joy. So we've kind of had these two streams of all the bad things that happen to us, but no, let's dance, put people on chairs for weddings, and then services. Well, what are services? But the Hasidic mode is services should be full of joy, and we'll get to that afterwards. And he has a teaching where he says prayer doesn't work when you're solemn. It doesn't work. It doesn't work because it's you got to get yourself into it and this, and so we'll come to, yeah.
Where he's talking about every letter between these worlds, we have to be in the mystical aura of those letters being in so much meaning in order to relate to that. That one's hard for me.
Then every letter contains words, or the letters form a word? Which one are you?
Every letter contains words.
Yeah.
Letters make up a word.
So I would.
Letters in themselves are kind of mystical.
They are, but I would shift it for our context and say every sound, maybe every sound of the chant, right? So it's like when you're really connected to prayer, again, that's why I go back to it a little bit, when the music of Shabbat is working and on fire, every nine, 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 you can tell some people who are really feeling it are feeling it, it's like it's moving, like every sound, doesn't matter what the sound is, but you're feeling it in your soul, right? It's making you on fire. So saying when you're really feeling it shining, then every sound, every letter is completely full, right? Full with all kinds of things you can't even quite explain, except in this poetic way. And it's, I mean, it's the same when someone is really speaking and is moving, right? When someone's speaking is really moving, it's like, oh, every word you hear, and you wanna, it's like, it doesn't even matter what that word is, but it's like another piece of food, right? Going into you. And, when, as a speaker, when I'm in that place and that's happening, I'm like, yeah, this is great,
In the
so-
zone.
yeah, it's in the whole, something is happening, there's a spiritual aspect to what's happening.
I think a lot has to do with it. Also, like Stuart's very enthusiastic when he sings.
Yeah,
And I've been to places where the cantor, with all, no enthusiasm, and you don't get that good feeling, joy.
well, you need enthusiasm, and it needs to be also coming from a
Heartfelt.
deep place, heartfelt too. When you mix it too, and but you can communicate it in different ways, but you feel when it's real, when it's not real, you feel it, and it's
Can
I
I
think-
just ask,
sure,
That,
Oh.
if
Go
you
ahead.
impose
yeah,
solemnity on prayer,
yeah,
that
interesting,
it actually puts it's a wall
Hmm.
between. Because if you think on a personal level with human beings, we talk to each other and there's fluidity in communicating with each other. And so it could be happiness, it could be sadness and stuff like that. But if you are always formal with somebody, like Mrs. Berlin, and and I'm on a very formal relationship with somebody and I never allow that friendship to
yeah,
then that puts a distance between you and someone else, and it's self-imposed. It's not the other side that's imposing the distance. I don't know if this makes a lot of sense.
no, I think you're right,
And, sometimes when you impose the solemnity when you're praying, then you are putting a block between you and the divine.
may I just ask a
Sure.
pedestrian question about this word, teva,
Yeah.
because he goes off in this wonderful way on this. So I looked up the word. It doesn't seem to be biblical that it means a word, that the word in biblical Hebrew, it seems to be just a chest or a box or the ark.
Yeah.
And so was he drawing on um, later rabbinic work or what? Because it's really remarkable that he built this whole thing out of the word that doesn't seem to have that meaning in the
Yeah.
Bible, and I just wondered to know where it comes from. That's
Yeah, really interesting question. So, right, so he's saying the word for ark, which is teva. He's saying, and what's your ark? It's your word. And then it says you should make a window to your ark, so you should make a window to your word, right? To let in light into your word. That's his little wordplay. But Phil is saying the word teva in the Bible itself doesn't mean word. So, what is, why is he doing this? And I think that the Hasidim allowed themselves a lot of leeway in how they're drashing. They're not. I don't think he cares. He doesn't care whether it's biblical word or not. He's just he's using the biblical text as he doesn't think the biblical text itself is really teaching this. I don't think.
yes.
He's
I
just
have
he's
no problem with that.
He's using, yeah.
But he gets it from somewhere, I assume, because he could have
You're
used
saying
any.
you're saying when did the word teva mean, when did teva mean word? I expect it's rabbinic, or late biblical. I don't know.
Well, I
the
looked it up, and
etymology.
it's not apparently in the Bible that way. And the only reason I'm pressing the point is because he builds such a wonderful uh,
Structure
world
on
out of
it.
it. Yes,
Yeah.
that's all. I'm not trying to quibble with it. I'm just trying to
Yeah.
understand because he goes in so many directions, and the whole idea of the worlds contained in the word.
Yeah.
It wouldn't make much difference maybe which word it was, but it's the one
Okay.
he picks up. And I didn't look at Safari. I assume this is available in Safari. I don't know.
It is. So I
Haven't looked.
I think that I'll give you a story which relates to a little bit, which was so my father spent a lot of time with Rabbi Shlomo Karlebach, who, was one of the modern Hasidic leaders, one could say, and Shlomo Karlebach would spend all these hours inside old Hasidic books with teachings, and then he would teach the teachings to his people, right? And this is what he would do, and in big gatherings and smaller gatherings on Shabbat, and it always seemed to connect so well with whatever he was trying to say. And my father would say, because a lot of the people there were not rabbis or literate, especially in the early years. He was speaking to Jewish hippies in San Francisco and all kinds of places. Anyway, my father, who was a rabbi and literate, would often go back to the text and try and find, okay, what was the original text that Shlomo Karlebach was drashing on? Because he was a genius, Talmudic genius, all kind of genius. And he would say the text almost never said even close to what Shlomo Karlebach was saying. He was taking a core idea that was there and then building it and turning it into a whole thing. And then the Baal Shem Tov and all the Hasidic, there's some who do. The Rebbe Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev is more kind of wants to be really rooted in the kind of the scholarship of it. But the Baal Shem, a lot of the time, and others, their language is the Torah, right? That's just their language. So they're just using whatever the language that they have to make the points that they have. And the imagery is powerful, right? Your prayer is like an ark above the storms of the world, right? That's the imagery. That's a beautiful image, right? And not only, but then your prayer has to have a window in it too. And so that's a beautiful imagery. So that he loves that imagery. So he doesn't mind that the word teva is not the biblical word. That's not in his. It's the imagery in of it is more important to him than the being precise.
That's so interesting. I didn't take it that way at all. That's really interesting. I'm stuck on that word too. I thought of it like symbolically, this is the ark that meant survival, that meant life.
Yeah.
That had a window of life.
Yeah.
That word itself should be
Hmm.
sacred.
Hmm.
But the notion of it.
I like the idea, it's like jazz.
It's like jazz. Mhm.
You take an idea and you go with it.
Beautiful. Yeah, I think that's exactly it.
I
So-
find it interesting.
Inspiration.
I'm sorry
Yeah.
to interrupt, Rabbi. But I'm
Yeah, go
finding
ahead.
it interesting that all of our conversation, when it comes to adding spirit and ruach and joy to all this prayer, we keep coming back to music.
Hmm.
Keep coming back to music because music is an energy of its own. It's not just
Remember-
entertainment. It imbues words, even if we're diddling 99999, there's still an energy to that if you're doing it musically. And typically if there's music, there is community as well, because the more voices, the more instruments, the more voices you have, the stronger that energy becomes. And I think back to all of the times, not all the times, but I remembering times in scripture, like when the Israelites cross the Red Sea, and what's the first thing that happens is the women pick up timbrels and they start singing. Right? They start singing to celebrate the victory, and that's a whole song. And there are songs in scripture, right? I mean, and I'm not just talking about psalms, which were meant to be sung, but there are all these other times in scripture where great joy is also in prayer, and prayer is also accompanied with music. So it's almost as if we have internalized that need to express this joy musically. I mean, because it's almost always there. Every synagogue has a cantor or some sort of musical entity, right? That helps lead the congregation in prayer, because even when we don't understand the words, even when we're not feeling the words, even though we're reading them and they're flat, you put that musical energy underneath them and they somehow come to life and they speak to us, they touch us. They touch.
Mm. Beautiful, right? There's a story, right, that when King Saul was disturbed by God, right? King Saul was the first king of Israel, and God abandoned him at a certain point because he wasn't following God's ways, and he was like almost cursed. He was, he was just beset by his demons, and the only thing that would help him was when King David played the harp for him, right? So it's like the sense of the power of music to heal the spirit, and to bring because it's a vibration, it's concrete almost, and it does something to us when it's coming from that
It
place.
goes back to Diane, you can't put a wall.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Mhm.
What I was thinking was saying put a wall, but because there is a power to solemnity too, but it is a different kind of power. And think of how our synagogue is built, and a lot of synagogues of its era, with a very high bima and kind of like the sense of, awe, which is beautiful, but it can also create that barrier. It's like when I remember being in the synagogue in Los Angeles, and it was kind of funny, but there's the bima, and then there was a structure. It was like one of those freestanding puppets where the rabbi would talk and go up these stairs, and they're floating in the air. It was the place from where he would talk down to everybody. It was like, like
Hollywood.
it's Hollywood, yeah.
It's also, but a
Yeah.
lot of
Yeah.
Catholic churches and.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Anglican, yeah, have that. Right. Right, they do.
I don't think that solemnity is bad.
Yeah.
I was saying a self-imposed solemnity. So there
Self-imposed,
are
interesting.
times when solemnity is worship, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, very nice.
I don't view prayer as like one facet. I view it as that whole multiplicity, like I was saying, a relationship.
Hmm.
So sometimes relationships are joyful and happy, and sometimes they're, sad and or whatever, because in my mind, when I pray, I take the whole ball of wax to God. It's like, it's the whole ball of wax. This is where I am. And that sort of thing. So I'm not saying solemnity is bad, but sometimes people impose a solemnity, like they can never be intimate or joyful with
Yeah,
God and that
yeah.
sort of thing. And that's what I was trying to say.
Well, I think that, and that's at the core of what the Hasidim were trying to do with everything, was to help people find that sense of closeness with God through prayer. And they felt that that's what prayer is, and it's very easy to lose touch with that because of the structure and formality of prayer and having a prayer book and
Makes me think of, there's a synagogue on the lake in Glencoe.
yeah.
And for a while, we had a bunch of friends, kids having bar mitzvahs, and the name mitzvahs there.
Hmm.
To me, it was funny. They had this automatic thing that instead of people going up and opening the ark, it would automatically, the curtains with, I burst out laughing at first.
Mechanical.
What the heck is this? That's like
Okay.
what you were
Yeah,
describing.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, swell.
Wait till the day where they have smoke come out.
Yeah. Joke. And then who's gonna come out? Moses? Who's his little beard?
The bride,
Holding
the
tent.
bride,
They had the-
the bride Shabbat, the bride Shabbat comes out. It would be
Then
dramatic.
it's becoming like
Yeah.
a church maybe, where there's a big statue of Mary.
Well, seen once I was joking with Cantor Figa, I was like, for Musaf of Rosh Hashanah, I said you should hang a zip line from the choir to the thing.
Instead of walking, yeah. That would be
I'm
then.
sure wake people up.
But, yeah, it was,
You would go, oh.
but I don't think it would add to anything, except it could wake people up, make people laugh.
Wake them up, huh?
The robe is flapping, All right, let's get to number, so, but before we go to number 16, what's interesting is two elements, right? The sense of it shining, but then there's something that you can do with it, right? These ascend joined together, unite of divinity. When you're feeling the letter shining, you must merge your soul with each of these aspects. So you should you can be just in the moment of this special thing. You can also do some work within yourself to try and merge more and more with it. And I think that's only understand that in a spiritual sense, right? It's like somehow allow yourselves to merge with that feeling. So when you're feeling that special feeling in prayer, try and go further into it. And that's to get more and more into the immeasurable pleasure and delight. You know, it should give you immeasurable pleasure and delight. That's kind of a there's one talking about different modes, but there's one synagogue that I went to sometimes rabbinical school, which was a Karlobach synagogue. So it was started by Father Shlomo Karlobach, and they only had one mode, which was tremendous joy, which is not a bad mode to have. And I know some people are like, well, it's nice to sometimes have something else, but they once, when they brought in the new Torah, you know, bringing in a new Torah here too, incredibly joyful. But someone brought a huge sign that said, "God is awesome." And people are just so joyful and waving this huge sign, "God is awesome," and dancing and singing with the Torah, and it's a sense of like, you know, immeasurable, a lot of delight. And, you know, sometimes it felt more showy, but I don't think it has to be showy. It can be very internal, right? Immeasurable delight can also be like, you could be, the person next to you could be having immeasurable spiritual delight and you would never know, right? That's doesn't have to, you don't have to be jumping up and down. I mean, some people like to jump up and down, but so, okay, let's at least go to the next one. Good, yeah, please.
In prayer, you must put all your strength into the pronunciation of the words, and you should go from letter to letter until you forget your physicality. And you think that the letters are combining and joining one to the other, and this is a great joy. If also in the material this is a joy, how much more so in the spirit? And this is the world of formation, Yetzirah. And afterward you shall come to the letters of Fa, and you shall not hear what you are saying. And this is because you have come into the world of creation, Riyah. And then you come to the attribute of nothingness, Ayin. And then your physical powers, senses are annihilated. And this is the world of emanation, Atzilut, the world of wisdom, the attribute of wisdom.
A very lofty text, but beautiful. And I translate a little bit, I think we could see how it connects. So when you're saying put all your strength in the pronunciation of the words, and you should go from letter to letter until you forget your physicality. I think in our context, I don't think he's saying Baruch. I don't think he means that. I think he just means, you know, really focus. You know, what does it mean? What does it mean until you?
Vladimir does
Yeah,
sometimes with the minion, you know, because I think that he's feeling a lot of joy, and so
He does feel a lot of joy.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing. But so how do you forget yourself? What does it mean to forget your physicality? But it's praying and so that you forget yourself. You're getting so much into something, right? That's what we're talking about in general to some degree, right? How do you get so much into something that you forget about all the other things that are on the mind, right? I mean, part of, you know, what we're talking before about the words of a speech or something is you get completely drawn into it, right? When the speech really is touching you, you're just in the moment of hearing the speech and you're not thinking about, you know, am I comfortable in my chair, or is, you know, my son is this or that, or my daughter, or my lunch is coming in a few hours, or whatever it is. That's something you did in the moment. Yeah. And so you forget your physicality, right? But a sense of tremendous being in the moment. And maybe, I'm not sure if we'll get to it this time, but I want to go back to reading this text that I brought as a supplement, because it tells us how you get to it, right? Because the question is, okay, how do you get to this level of concentration? You know, how do you approach prayer and actually get to that? Because it's not easy, right? Is it easy to concentrate in this way so much that you forget yourself in the prayer? I mean, how do you do it? Anybody have any thoughts?
my only thought is, it's not a how, but it's contrasting 15 to 16.
You're kind of,
16 tells you, you will get to this.
yeah,
15 says, then you must merge your soul. So that's telling you what you must do, but if you're going to be aware that you're merging your soul, not merging your soul.
This just
Ah.
wants it to happen, you're saying?
This one says it's gonna happen, it doesn't say how, this one commands you to do something to
Mm.
happen, and that seems like the antithesis of being.
Beautiful. Well, I think that I think what 15 is talking about is there's a moment where you're already in it, where you can take it to the next level. And it's like a little tweak you can make where suddenly you merge into your soul, you merge into the experience that you're already in. And it's not an intellectual thing, it's like something that's happening within you that you can, if you're really feeling it, and it's like I'm in the zone, and I'm just gonna even more
I have no,
into it.
no will other than to do that.
No will, let's let go of anything else, just merge into the soulfulness of it, merge into it, but I think but I think what you're saying is completely right too, which is the second you try and do something, you could also end the whole thing, right? Because when you're in an experience, you're in an experience, and the second you're like, oh, let me do this thing, you're no longer in the experience, you're in trying to do something else.
And
So,
16
yeah.
puts you in that experience, it doesn't,
yeah,
it assumes you're gonna, it doesn't say how, but it creates that.
it creates a bit of a path to it. It's like, because it's like this slow focus.
Forgot where that church is. It's somewhere in Downers Grove or Clarendon Hills or somewhere. And the people get so wrapped up in what they're saying that they fall down.
Really? Wow.
Oh, that's the speaking.
The
The
Pentecostals,
deacon and,
yeah.
yeah, I've heard of that church. I think it's still in existence.
A bunch of them.
Yes, of course, it's still in existence. It's called Catching the Spirit, and it's common. It's particularly in Pentecostal churches,
Right.
African American churches. It's it's exactly what we're talking about here. It's where you get lost in the prayer and the intent, and you get caught up in this union with the divinity. It's Hasidic almost, and it's very common, and the mainline churches don't typically ascribe to it, the white churches, but African American churches sure do.
Yeah.
All denominations, I mean, the Presbyterians, the AMEs, they will catch the spirit, as it is said, and it's considered perfectly normal, and it is considered a mark of great union with the divinity.
Yeah. And the image at least I get from, some of it is just from the media, but in African American services of, everybody's in that moment together, right? Everybody's swaying in the same way, and
Yes.
kind of like everybody's caught the spirit, and you're all in it, and which I think that's the same thing. I mean, the thing of kind of collapsing on the floor, which I haven't seen, so I don't know what that's like. But I think I'm not sure if that's different than forgetting your physicality, because that feels very physical to some degree. Like falling on the floor feels physical. I mean, if you're really having a super high, I would, to me, losing your physicality is kind of like going to a place purely of spirit that's very refined, not to a place of kind of like
Physical collapse.
physical, yeah, like your body's an automatic, so it doesn't matter what you're, and
But if you look at the people, like at musical Shabbat, like you're saying, many are doing,
yeah,
there's some that don't allow themselves to do
That's
it.
true.
They're just sitting there like, ugh.
yeah.
And
Well,
God, I feel bad for them. They just don't let them
Yeah.
experience.
it's true. Well, this is what Diane was saying. Some people put a
Put a barrier.
barrier because they don't want to access that place, and I think you're very correct. It's the same barrier that people put in their relationships with sometimes other people, or they're, I don't want to get to that place of, closeness which is a vulnerable place. Maybe, some people would say it's a vulnerable place, but it's a joyful place. So what are you're missing out on the joy, right?
That's right.
Missing out on the immeasurable thing. Yeah, exactly. And Yeah, and there's different little things you can do to try and make it happen, right? Um, so let's talk about the end, and then we'll see if we have time to read this and see how we do it. No, let's actually do it. Come, well, might as well. Let's read the supplement. We've read this text before at least 1 or 2 times. I wanted to bring it in this context. I think this talks about how you do, how do you get to that place of losing your physicality? We've read this text before, but let's read it again. Norma.
Rabbi Nachman of Breslov.
Yeah.
When a person walks in a field, he or she collects roses and beautiful flowers one by one until they make a single bouquet. And afterward, they collect more flowers one by one and make another bouquet and join the 2 bouquets together. Thus, they walk and collect and gather more and more beautiful and pleasing bouquets. Similarly, a person proceeds in prayer from letter to letter until they join the letters together to make symbols and then whole words. And afterward, they join 2 words together and go on and collect more letters and words until they complete one blessing. And afterward, they collect more and more letters and words and go from the blessing of the forefathers to the blessing of power, and from the blessing of power to the blessing of holiness. And so they continue further on through all the blessings and prayers. Who can describe the great beauty of the spiritual collections and bouquets that a person collects and gathers together in their words of prayer? The general principle is that they need to make all their prayers one. And in each word they speak, there should be found all of the words of the prayer, from the beginning of the prayer until the end of the prayer. It should all be one. When they stand at the last word of the prayer, they should still be standing at the first word of the prayer, in order that in this manner they will be able to pray the entire prayer without separating their mind and heart from the first letter of the prayer.
So that's how you do it. And then Phil, Nancy, and Charles, I just sent you that text of an email. And I mean, we've seen it before, but I think what it's, because in the other one he says, like focusing on every letter and letter. And here he brings this idea, which I think we can relate to, is when you're in the midst of something. And I really relate to this idea of when you're, I don't know, on a mission, to collect flowers, or even to buy something for a person you love. And it's kind of like, it's like an experience, you go and you're this flower and this flower and this flower, and you're right, it's one experience, right? Your intention is holding the whole experience. Or when you want to buy something for somebody you really like, you go to the store, you look at this thing, no, maybe I want to get this thing, maybe go to a different store, but somehow you're holding the beginning of the experience and the end of the experience. It's all like one experience, right? Because the whole thing is enveloped in an intention, which is, to create bouquet. And so we do this when we, in certain areas of our life, we're able to hold one intention for a whole period. And that's what he's saying, how you do this in prayer. You have to go into the prayer thinking, I'm going to hold the whole of my prayer experience together. I'm going to hold the whole of the morning, just the way when I were to collect flowers. So I'm collecting flowers for God, right? I'm collecting things or for the universe. And so I think that I'm stringing it together the way I would collect a bouquet. The way, again, I relate to this, buying a present for my wife or for someone, I'm going to this store and I'm like, this jewelry, no, maybe this one. And it's very joyful, I go to this store, maybe I want to get this thing. And it's kind of like a whole fun little thing, and then at the end, whatever I get, and then, whether she likes it or not, you never know, but, but it doesn't, it's a joyful process. And I think it's a really relatable way to understand the concentration.
With the
Yeah.
flower, okay.
The parable, isn't it? So it's like, so somehow approaching prayer in that way. And I think part of this is a musical Shabbat I just do because we do here, but I think in musical Shabbat, part of how we do the service and the way I talk in the service, I try and create a continuum of sound and of intention that links the whole thing together. It doesn't matter if you're singing one prayer or the other prayer. It's not like a bunch of little individual prayers. The whole thing is one whole, and that's how prayer, the whole thing should feel like. It doesn't matter if you're standing in this part or in this part or in this beginning of it or the end of it. The whole thing should just feel like one big whole that you're immersed in. And that's kind of what prayer experience is supposed to be.
Some people like, what Diane says is so true, they won't get up and dance because, I mean, some people can't. They
It
got.
doesn't have to be, yeah, it's not
but
just a dance, yeah.
different days, it's
Some-
like, do it.
Yeah, and there's the dancing part, and for me, the dancing part is just a way of bringing some
Get
concreteness,
rejuvenated.
getting it happening. But it's also, you could be there and really feeling it in the pews too. There's some people who don't have, you can just see on their face, they're really into it. And there's some people who are like, okay, this is nice, but
I'm not
I'm
doing
waiting,
it.
I'm waiting for the next thing to come up, and they might even say at the end, okay, very nice, but. High Solomon, who really could not dance, for a long time now because of his physical condition, but I could just tell he was so into it. At the end, sometimes I would come and I would like, we'd dance a little bit in the thing just because he loved the feeling, and so you gotta, yeah.
Myra is like that too.
Myra too, yeah, Myra too. You can just see her whole face is shining, and she's totally into it, but she's in the
She can't
she
dance.
can't dance, but there's a feeling of being swept up into something, and so sometimes this is the work that we can do as an individuals to try and make that happen, and we have more control over our circumstances when we're doing our own prayers. So if you're doing the Shema at night by yourself, then you can do that, right? You can try and connect the whole Shema as if the whole Shema is one prayer to God, saying, okay, I'm doing this for you, God, here's my Shema prayer to you. At synagogue, it's a little bit harder because there's more variables, but you can still try and make your own prayer that's in your heart something that's going on. And if we go back to the number 16, so the first part is about forgetting yourself into it and joining the letters and combining them. And the second part is how you're going into this progression of more and more spirit, right? At the beginning, you're in the world, there's 4 different worlds in Kabbalah, right? So he's just mapping out to that. But he's saying first you're just in a very physical place. And then you come to letters of thought, and you won't even hear what you're saying. It's like you're praying, but you can't hear what you're saying. It's a really interesting kind of expression. Maybe again, maybe there is a time when you're singing a musical Shabbat where you're not even thinking about what you're saying, you're just in the moment, right? That's because you've come to the world of creation. Then you come to the attribute. So there's a great joy. The first is a great joy, and that's the world of formation, right? So first you just feel great joy. There's a place where you're stopping aware of what you're even singing, like your mouth is singing the words, but you're not even aware of it. And that's like the next level. But there's a level even beyond that, and that's where you're not aware at all of any of your senses. You're just kind of in light. You're just completely beyond
Like
everything.
Nirvana.
It's like a taste of nirvana, maybe, but and there you might be dancing, you might not be dancing, you might be swaying, you're not swaying, you might be,
Yeah.
but you're not aware of it. You're just in some totally, you're just completely in a place of light, and I would say that for your average Jew, maybe the place where they come closest to this is, like a wedding of like their child or something where they just feel tremendous joy that just transports them beyond everything, right? And you're just singing, and you're in that you're in the hora, and you're not even aware of singing, and you're just so joyful, you're just transported, right? You're just in this, everything is just joy, right? That's maybe a place where people feel a little bit of a taste of that, but you can get to that, and the Hasidic nigunim are kind of designed to take you to that place, right?
Like when one of your children born.
Yeah, like when my children are born, I really believe in prayer. In meditation, you can get to it too in a different way, but in prayer, the repetition gets you there. That's part of why nigun is repetitive, right? Because we have to sing a whole different. If you know the words by heart, you can get to it. But if you have to think of it, the moment you start thinking, you're out of it, right? So what Barbara was saying earlier, right? But if you get into a repetitive space, the repetition 999999, it helps you get more. You can kind of lose touch of and just allow yourself to go into a space of no physicality, and then you're when you're in a place of spirit, you come back, then you really it's like a refresher. I remember once talking to someone about it. It's like you could have that moment of doing this and going there, and it can feel better than taking a 2-week vacation, for your soul, because your soul's kind of, you've really gone far away from all the regular things that weigh on you and on your heart and that put you here and there and it's this and take you to a place of just transcendence. One can get there in one's own prayer life, meditation in a way too. But there also is a way, when you do it in a congregation, you also can get that feeling of a crowd being in that space, which is extra beautiful and special. And then, maybe just a final point, and we'll stop. I feel this year at Yom Kippur, I felt as a congregation that we were somewhat there, because it's the end of Yom Kippur, and a lot of people are fasting, so there is that sense of not being in the physical, and you're just waiting for the end, and there's just a sense of the prayers kind of washing over you, and you're kind of, you're in a place that's not where you usually are, I think that's part of what this, so they're saying there's a journey you go through of different levels of experience, right? One is you're feeling very much in your body, and then there's one where you're just feeling in the joy. And there's one where you're saying the word, but you're not even aware of saying the words. And there's one where you're just like all light, all beyond all of it. And all those, you can't have all of it all the time, but that there's and how you get there is what he's talking about, that bringing in that sense of, one of the ways, that sense of spiritual joy, of gratitude, flowers, bringing a bouquet to the creator, or a sense, which is the joy of a wedding too, right? You're so joyful and grateful in life, your child is getting married, or you're getting married, or child is born, so you're so, that joy can carry so much of that and transport you. And next time, maybe we'll continue with this, and right, so when you're in the solemnity can't carry you to that place as easily, right? It can carry you to a different place. Solemnity and prayer can carry you to a place of awe, of seeing your smallness compared to the universe, of seeing important things in your own life and in life in general. But it's not going to transport you into the light, it's not going to.
I think you're saying something so important. It's resonating with me from like when I was 20 years old. We lived with Hassids for 3 years, and they always wanted my husband to put on a show. We were really challenged. I said, no, I don't. And he said, just do it repetition. You don't have to feel it first. So do the structure first. And we were very much, you have to feel something first. And I think that's what you're saying. Like, you can't just come and feel it. It's gotta be, you gotta do this a number of times plus it comes.
Beautiful, yeah. It's if you're concentrating, thinking, this is the difficulty of Jewish prayer, right? You come into there and you're like, if it feels foreign and hard, then in your mind you're just thinking this is foreign and hard, right? That's what's in your mind. So it's hard to actually experience the prayer part. And the more you're able to get away from this is foreign and hard, the more you're able to experience, to feel like this is.
And as you're saying, the more you repeat it, then you don't pay.
More people, you don't pay attention to words. Exactly, it doesn't even matter anymore. I shared the story often of going with my brother, hasn't been really connected to ritual Jewish life, although he's become a lot more in the last 10 years, but this is 10 years ago, 15 years ago. I'm going to Yom Kippur service, and my father and I are like, this is the best Yom Kippur service ever. And he's like, what are you talking about? That was terrible. Do you actually believe all those things you were saying? And we're like, what things? And he's like, blah, 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 blah. And we're like, oh, we don't pay attention to that. And what about blah, blah? No, we don't pay attention to that either. And so it's like, when it's something you're used to navigating, then you ignore the parts you want to ignore, you focus the parts you want to focus, and you just allow yourselves to.
I tell somebody to come to synagogue, they say, well, I went and I didn't get anything out of it. Because they have to keep going. Repetition, right?
It's like when you're learning to drive. Driving is not very pleasurable when you're learning to drive, because you're like, but once you don't have to focus on the driving parts,
Fun.
it's fun, right? You don't even think about it. You do all the driving parts automatically, and you get to just
Enjoy the road.
enjoy the road.
Mhm.
Phil wanted to.
Oh, Phil, go ahead.
I just wanted to say you reminded me of the Pesukei de Zimra. I guess it is on Shabbat morning. I think it's Psalm 19. Ein Devarim, Ein Omer ve'Ein Devarim. There is no speech. There are no words. I find that very striking. It maybe the context might not quite fit, but it's powerful to me. There's no speech. There are no words. There's just whatever.
Beautiful. Well, the Suke de Zimra, right? It's a bunch of psalms, and you finish with Psalm 150, and all the other psalms, are about, praise be God in the heavens, praise be God here. And Psalm 150 is praise God with the flute, praise God with the lyre, praise God with the cymbals, praise God with the this. And what's the last words of the entire book of Psalms? Let all your soul praise God with every breath, praise God. So you go from words to music, and then it's just every breath that's praising God. So it's exactly that movement towards, towards just
Totality.
connect totality. Beautiful. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Rabbi,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Hi, Bonnie and David.
Hi, sorry, our time is screwed up because there's 1 week where
Oh,
the,
yes, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
We forgot that our
You
time,
changed time. You already changed time, right?
and we were here all day. I mean,
Yeah, we did, yeah, and
Right.
Oh,
yeah,
Sorry
sorry,
you missed
well, we'll
it.
see you next week.
that's,
see you
we're
next
old.
week. You would have enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Cause I did back in